What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Scott Proctor alongside, per usual, my guy Matt Morris, and we're back with another episode, A Simple Question. But we'll have more than one this time around because we have a special guest joining us today. He covers the Carolina Panthers for the Charlotte Observer. He's my good friend, Ellis L. Williams. Welcome to the show, my man. Thanks for joining us.
Scott, I couldn't pass up an opportunity to come back and chat with you, my man. And Matt, I enjoy what you guys have been doing, so it's a pleasure to come on here and talk with y'all.
Love to hear it, man. Let's get right into it, man. You spent last week down in Mobile, Alabama at the Senior Bowl where a lot of these future 2022 NFL draft picks were working out for potential NFL teams. I got to ask you about the quarterbacks because I know you had your eyes on the quarterbacks, some offensive linemen, maybe some playmakers on both sides of the ball. Which quarterback impressed you the most over the last week at the Senior Bowl? And I guess kind of a 2-1, who do you think kind of improved their stock the most over the last week at the quarterback position?
Yeah, it's a well-timed question. I'm actually working on a film review for Liberty's Malik Willis for that exact reason. He was electric at the Senior Bowl, specifically on day 2 when both teams were forced to practice in pouring rain. You saw Kenny Pickett struggle with snaps and some ball control. Of course, he wears 2 gloves, didn't have his hand measured. He's going to have that happen at the combine, but there's some talks, and we're at that time of year where everyone makes a big deal out of hand sizes, but that is Kenny Pickett's situation right now. And he did mishandle some snaps. Like I said, the ball didn't look the greatest coming out. Meanwhile, you got Malik Willis over there who just has a cannon of an arm. He was spraying it all over. And I use spray purposely because sometimes he is inaccurate, and that showed up on tape. But when he's on point, he's on point. The velocity and the torque on that ball is impressive, the way it comes off his hands. And that checked out. And then most importantly at the Senior Bowl, aside from physically seeing how the ball comes off these quarterbacks' hands, you actually get to make sense of their stature. And does Malik Willis's 6'1", 215 listing actually check out with the eye test? And it does. I already wrote he has weight in all the right places. I'm talking thick forearms, built like a running back in the lower half. I had one scout tell me that he's built like Adrian Peterson in the lower body, and he runs like that. He runs mean. I just rewatched his game against Syracuse. A lot of design runs for him. Of course, you don't really see that at the Senior Bowl aside from that one scamper in the bowl game itself. But the practices are a controlled setting where you see pocket presence, you see the physical traits of how they throw the ball. And I would say Malik Willis did the most to at least separate and join Kenny Pickett's tier as the top 2 guys. I don't think there's a consensus number 1 yet, but Kenny Pickett, Malik Willis look like the top 2 guys. Now I'd say North Carolina Sam Howell threw some pretty nice balls, confirming that he deserves some consideration for best arm in the class. There's some other things that he lacks that won't have him in that number 1 tier with Malik and Kenny, but I thought Sam Howell had a nice week as well.
Now, Al, kind of going off of that, Carolina is looking at a quarterback, and there's kind of some interesting connections between Pickett and Carolina, and then also Malik Willis and Carolina between Matt Rule and Cam Newton. Do you think those connections kind of put one ahead of the other when Carolina is looking at their big board and trying to figure out who they want under center?
That's an interesting proposition, and there's a lot to unpack there. Let's start with Kenny Pickett. Owner David Tepper was a minority owner of the Pittsburgh Steelers before buying the Carolina Panthers, and he donated to Pittsburgh quite a bit while he was there. He hasn't made any donations to the university since acquiring the Carolina Panthers. But point being is he's got heavy ties to that university, which would then, of course, mean Kenny Pickett and a close following of him probably since he got to Pittsburgh. So you never know how an owner can influence a draft. On the record, they're all going to say, nope, the owners are hands off, but that's not the case. And you buy a team to control it, right? That's why it's called ownership. You don't just want to sit in the box seats. You think you're smart enough to influence these games because you've been successful in every aspect of your life up until then. So I would say ownership would lean towards Kenny Pickett. From just what I'm hearing, how much they influence those boards, we're going to find out once we get to the combine. That's when coaches and scouts finally gather and they start having influence over the boards. As for Malik Willis, his ties to Cam Newton are probably more just storylines than actual influence. Now, if Cam were to come back or something, that again, I think that would fare the storyline well, but I don't think it's going to have anything to do with the evaluation of Malik Willis and if he could end up in Carolina. But and then I should mention, jumping back to Kenny Pickett real quick too, he committed to Matt Rule at Temple, and then did decommit prior to Matt leaving for Baylor. So the two moves are unrelated. Like Kenny didn't decommit from Temple because Matt was leaving. Just it happened to time out within that 3 to 4 week window that happened. So from ownership to the head coach, there's a lot of things that pull you in the direction of Kenny Pickett. But then there's enough to where, Malik Willis, the raw, the traits, and some of his ties as well should bode well when it's time to make a case for Malik if he ends up being the pick at 6.
Sure. Talking still about what the Panthers might do at number 6 overall, is that a lock that they go quarterback? I know they met with Willis. I know they've met with Pickett, and certainly quarterback is on their radar. But like I said, is it a lock that they go quarterback at 6? And if not, what's the likelihood of them maybe trading back, or what do their options look like at number 6 if they don't go quarterback?
Yeah, Scotty Vans, man. That's the $1 million question. That's the multi-million-dollar question, isn't it? Yeah, what are the Panthers going to do at 6? Let me lay it up for you this way. I would say before the Senior Bowl, it seemed high probability that they were going to go tackle. Like just go the safe route, clean up this offensive line, and figure out quarterback later. As this beast that is the NFL draft gains momentum, we're going to hear a lot of talk about these quarterbacks. And when you look at Malik, you see the traits, a guy who could become the best quarterback in the draft. You hear stuff like Lamar Jackson and Michael Vick. I think he's closer to Josh Allen, just not as tall, not as proven with the arm angles, but that comes with time, both being FCS quarterbacks. And those are the type of picks that excite a fan base, right? Will excite your owner. We already talked about the owner's ties to Pittsburgh and Kenny Pickett. And Kenny is the more pro-ready option of the two, which then would bode well for a coach like Matt Rule, who, let's face it, is on the hot seat. He just had 2 position coaches leave for parallel or the same job at other organizations. The wide receiver coach left for Pittsburgh to take the same job coaching receivers with Mike Tomlin, and the DB coach left for Las Vegas and joining McDaniel's staff. And that's all for job security reasons. I mean, it is known league-wide that Matt Rule's on the hot seat, meaning these guys went and found just more stable situations, right? Yeah. So when you look at Kenny Pickett, then you think of a guy who's more pro-ready, more Mac Jones-ish, who you can plug in right away and you're going to play over Sam Darnold and give you the best chance to win now. All of that is reasons that take you away from one of those left tackles. But I think one of those 3 left tackles would be the safest pick, though I've heard executives say that there's a chance all 3 of those left tackles are gone by the time the Panthers pick at 6, which then, Scott, as you ended that question, would open the door to a trade down. And if the Panthers can drum up the excitement for these quarterbacks and get a team like Denver or Washington to think that they need to move up to get Malik Willis or Kenny Pickett to go get their guy, then I think Carolina would benefit a lot from recouping the day 2 and day 3 picks they lost in the Sam Darnold trade. This is a deep, deep draft, specifically on both fronts, offense and defensive line, and that's exactly what Carolina needs. They want to win up front finally, something they haven't been able to do for years. So if they can throw some smoke screens out there, get the hype going for these quarterbacks, I think trading back would actually be most beneficial for them. Even if that means passing on one of the tackles, they can, move back 10 spots, still get a decent tackle, a guy who could probably be a day 1 starter, and then turn into a multi-contract guy while recouping those day 2 picks that they desperately need because the roster's thin at very important spots on this team.
Makes sense.
And I mean, talking about those tackles and talking about guys that might be in that like mid-teens range, I was able to talk with Trevor Penning before the Senior Bowl, and, it sounds like everything he wanted to do at the Senior Bowl, he was able to do. What are your thoughts on Penning and being a guy that might be in that range in the mid-teens?
Yeah, that was you guys are good at what you do, because that was the exact name I was going to bring up, and we just seamlessly transitioned to Penning. So see, that's why I come on with y'all. It's just great podcast.
You got to be prepared. We know you are.
We try to be.
Yeah, and look, I'm just trying to keep up with y'all. So, I actually talked to a scout this morning who is highest on Penning. I mean, he's not saying he's going to take him, that he's tackle 1 or 2, but just from a value standpoint and then longevity, he's actually highest on Penning. He translated in my notes here as I look, a year one starter, probably at right tackle, can grow into a left tackle, has four position flexibility, meaning you can play him at guard if you'd like. And he has shades of Zach Martin as well, who was, all pro guard for the Cowboys. So I was really impressed by that takeaway. So I think that really tells you all you need to know. And then when you look at the tape, the Senior Bowl that Travis Penning had, just a mean streak. I mean, he's out there jawing with guys, not making any friends. And that's the type of stuff that, though couldn't get old and get gimmicky for guys who have been out there who know what it's like, it's something that O-line coach is going to pound the table for a guy. So I think Trevor Penning has a chance to be a top 20 pick and should be a guy the Panthers eye if they do decide to trade back.
100%. I'm going to switch gears just a little bit here. And Matt, you can go back to some draft stuff if you want to here in a bit. I wanted to get your thoughts, reaction on obviously the whole Brian Flores situation. I spoke with a lawyer last week who, deals with kind of the sports side of things, and he kind of gave me the legality side of things. I'm curious what maybe even at the Senior Bowl, maybe some reaction, some stuff that you might have heard. What's kind of the buzz, I guess, suppose around the league in terms of this whole lawsuit and this situation among hiring practices in the NFL?
Yeah, it's a watershed moment in the league, far overdue. These sham or token interviews have been going on for far too long. It just took the right catalyst and the perfect storm to finally get here. And now that we are, it's the story that's going to dominate the league through the Super Bowl. When Roger Goodell talks, that's all he's going to be peppered with. It's going to carry through the Super Bowl. It'll carry through the Combine. Of course, we are going to get basically every head coach and GM available for media interviews at the Combine, and I am sure every local and national reporter will be queuing up questions regarding the situation. And we got our first taste of that when Dan Campbell and Robert Saleh, Lions and Jets head coaches respectively, who were coaching the national American teams at the Senior Bowl, they were both asked about it. And to no surprise, whether it's a lack of preparation or just what the answer is going to be for 2/3, if not more, of the league, is they didn't want to go there. They wanted to focus on the players and focus on the process and focus on the Senior Bowl. But eventually those answers aren't going to suffice, and they're going to have to come and be transparent about how they see themselves as key players in rectifying this situation. And head coaches have a lot of power in this league. But my colleague, Jonathan Alexander, who wrote a really great column about how ownership here in Carolina hasn't done enough to promote minority hires, both in the coaching staff and the front office. The point of his column being it starts with ownership. And until they get the message, until their bottom line is hurt, this is going to be a tough ship to right. But it starts with Brian Flores. He doesn't need to hear it from me, but I commend him for it. And he very well could be sacrificing his coaching career, much like Colin Kaepernick sacrificed his playing career for a better cause. It's unfortunate that Black people have to go to such extremes to just simply get their point across and be understood. But that's a price that our people have been paying for, 400 plus years now. And it's finally here in the NFL. And where it goes, I'm not sure. A lot of window dressing is probably how it starts. Completely revamping of the Rooney Rule is likely the first place this heads. And then after that, it's going to take time, 5-10 years, maybe another generation for it to really change. The NFL is littered with nepotism. How you police that is beyond me. I could talk ad nauseum about other ideas, perhaps a coaching academy that the NFL could start and really getting at the ground level of all this. But to end it how it started, this is a fight Brian Flores is the right man to take on. I commend him for it, and it'll be the story that dominates the league really up until training camp, and if not through week one of the upcoming season.
No doubt.
Well, amazing answer. First of all, completely agree with you. But one last question on the draft.
Yeah.
Who is a guy that you see in the later rounds that is just going to be one of those steals? Like when a fan base sees that they got this guy 3, 4th or 5th round. It's just to be like, wow, I can't believe we were able to get him.
So I got the name Christian Watson jotted down, wide receiver, North Dakota State. This is a really interesting part of the draft process because, like the scout I talked to today, I asked a very similar question, but his organization doesn't put draft grades on their guys. They more position them and how they think they'll transition into the league. You know, role player, starter, multi-contract, blue chip, all pro. You know, those type of levels. So trying to gauge where these guys go. We don't really have it aggregated yet. And that's when I use aggregation purposely there because it's funny how this process becomes a mock draft of itself. You know, like we end up being so tied to the mock drafts and make fun of them, but they're actually what these executives and head coaches look at themselves because they don't have time to be as thorough and nuanced as the scouts. And then you hear the scouts not even worry about round grades because they think it's all hoopla. So there's no exact science to this, but just getting back to Christian, he's a guy who, being an FCS receiver, someone who you wonder about his level of competition, a guy who the scout told me didn't face any press man coverage because he's a 6'5", 4'4" type kid. At the Senior Bowl, he proved he can handle press man. He caught the ball fairly well. There's still some concern about his hand-eye coordination and his catching ability, but he thinks he's working on that and polishing it. Was impressed with his route running, and then again, just the athlete, as I said, 6'5", 4'4", goes up and wins those alley-oop jump balls. So I think that's one name to watch for a team out there looking for an outside playmaking receiver, maybe shades of Mike Williams, who should be available later in the draft.
That's what's up. Love to see them NDSU guys because you know they can play.
It doesn't stop.
That's what's up. I have one more question about the Panthers. This is kind of just something that I've just been curious about. What did you make of the firing of Joe Brady? Did that confuse you or some people around the team like it did me? Or was that something that was expected? Obviously, he's already got another gig. He's the Bills quarterback coach. Well, I think he'll do great with Josh Allen there. What did you make of that? Did you think that was kind of a decision rule kind of made to maybe save some face? And I know you talked a little bit earlier about him probably knowing that he's on the hot seat, or if he doesn't know, he is. Just kind of talk about that Brady situation because it was weird to me.
No, it definitely was. And the strangest thing about it was the timing. Not that it was during the bye week, the fact it was technically after the bye week.
Yeah.
You know, and that to me, I don't want to use the term red flags, but it speaks to a little lack of organization. There's a long list of things that Matt Rule has gotten himself into that if this is his last season as the Panthers head coach, how the handling of Joe Brady will not crack the top 8. I don't know if it's in the top 10, but it is a footnote in his story here. But when I did more reporting on it, you could see where Matt was coming from. Again, timing aside, Joe Brady had never called plays before. You know, he was inexperienced. We'll leave it at that. There's a reason he is now a quarterback coach, probably the progression he should have took rather than landing in Carolina and being asked to formulate an offense that he didn't even have the necessary parts to run.
But this is my thing, not to cut you off, but like Matt Rule knew that before he hired him. So it was just a lot of, like you said, it was a red flag to me personally. But
yeah. And look, we can compare the Joe Brady hiring to them selecting a quarterback at 6 if they go and do so. Because to me, it's a splash move. I mean, you hire all coaches you're familiar with, guys you have ties with at Temple and Baylor.
Right.
And then one of your most important coordinator job you give to a guy you never worked with who never called plays. To me, that's splash. That's got ownership written on it over it in a way, and it never lined up. It never added up, and that's why he was out the door. And then you're now with Ben McAdoo being in here, not that inspiring of a hire,
right.
but exactly, but a guy who at least has done the job before, and they have another head coach in the building. And really was probably the best guy for the job considering who we interviewed. So it's how Carolina turns this around. It's going to start with the offense, and Matt and now Ben McAdoo have a lot to figure out.
No doubt about it. Probably last question I got for you, El, before we let you go, man. Obviously Super Bowl Sunday this weekend. I know you don't have a horse in the fight, so to speak. But who do you like this weekend? Rams, Bengals, and why?
Man, I could rant about this for a minute. I was just reminiscing about my time in Cleveland. For people who don't know, who are listening, I spent the past 2 seasons covering the Cleveland Browns.
Yeah.
And a lot of my coverage before getting to Carolina, I came to Carolina, joined the Charlotte Observer in week 8 of the NFL season. So my whole preseason covering the Browns was all Super Bowl talk, right? I know you guys talked about it. I know y'all heard it.
Yep.
And now the other team in Ohio is in the Super Bowl. And I know
sick.
Right, exactly. I mean, like you said, I don't have a dog in the fight when you're this the big J journalism, as you know, Scotty Vans. We take our fandom out of it,
right?
But it is just it is a little surreal. I'm gonna be real with you, which is why I can't take myself to pick the Bengals, despite as much respect as I have for Joe Burrow. He is a guy you hear it all week. You hate to bet against Joe Burrow, yada yada yada. I get it.
Yeah.
I think you're going to see Sean McVay show us everything he learned from that first Super Bowl when Bill Belichick held him to 3 points. It's been reported ad nauseum how much that still eats at him. I can't see him losing to Zach Taylor, the Bengals head coach, who was the Rams quarterback coach in that same Super Bowl that they lost to Bill Belichick. Aaron Donald, I think it's after this Bengals offensive line that is the only offensive line to rank lower than the Panthers O-line, which tells you enough about Joe Burrow.
Everything you need to know.
Exactly. And then you get one Von Miller game. We've already seen him wreck a Super Bowl. And I think Odell Beckham scores a touchdown. So give me the Rams, 31-24. I think we have a good game, but I think the Rams pull out to a comfortable lead in the fourth quarter.
See, I know that's why you guys are friends, because Scott was saying like the exact same thing about OBJ and Von
literally
before this. Literally. Like, those two are going to be Super Bowl MVP if it goes down the way that I could have gone down.
I would give my thoughts, but Ellis, you already covered it for me. So there.
Hey, you know me and Bands are going to be on the same page with that one. Give us that OBJ. Give us that OBJ Super Bowl celebration. I got to see it.
100%. I think he has a good chance to win the Super Bowl MVP. Quite honestly, I think he's my first pick, but.
Man, we need to get in a state that allows FanDuel and put some cheddar on that one, man.
For real.
Right.
Awesome. But it's been fun, Ellis, man. Like I said, thank you so much for joining us, man. It's been super insightful. And you're dope as always. Everybody go follow Ellis on Twitter. Go follow his great work that he's doing for the Charlotte Observer, covering the Panthers. But that's going to do it for us. For Scott Proctor, Matt Morris, and our guy Ellis L. Williams. We'll catch you next time.